My name is Chris. Again, I've been tending bar for, it'll be 25 years next week, which is an insane thing to say out loud, considering I started doing this when I was 20 years old, thinking it was going to be a part-time job. And I have been working throughout my entirety of this 25 years in some form of behind the bar in an on-premise way. So whether that's in cocktail bars or restaurants or nightclubs or catering, I've done it all. And I can say as a buyer for the past 18 years, there is a few things that I would love to talk about and we'll kind of focus on to give people who are trying to get their products on a shelf in an on-premise space some things that I've experienced over my almost 2 decades of doing this that I think are really, really important. So having said that, I think the first thing is the most important part of this is as someone who is involved in a brand. Now, whether that's that you own the brand, you're a representative of the brand, you're a distributor of the brand, you're a salesperson for the brand, whatever that is, it's important for the brands to make sure they're educating their staff on their why. And I go back to one of my favorite books I've ever read, which is a book called Start With Why by Simon Sinek, who happens to be a regular of the restaurant I work at. And I tell him all the time that when I do bar consulting, when I'm training staffs, when I'm doing things like this, I always use that concept because I think at the end of the day, when you look at these other brands that I put up on the shelf, if I said to you, what do these brands stand for? You could all instantly know what they stand for, right? That symbol of just do it. We know what that messaging is, right? And so I think a lot of brands lose that and they forget what their why is. And every brand has a story. Every brand has distillation practices and unique selling points, but they also have something about what their goals are, right? Some of them are hyper-focused to be barn burners that go right in and out of the well and make profits and move really crazy and you order cases of it. Other are luxury brands that are going to really show off and sit on that shelf for a little while, but give an opportunity for people who want to have a luxurious spirit or an opportunity of an experience of that night to be able to afford that. So it's why, what's your core identity? What is your product's role on the shelf? What is it meant to do in that space? What's your target audience, right? Think about it. There are brands that are positioned toward early 20s, and there are brands that are positioned toward people who are very, 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 very wealthy. And so I wouldn't, if I was, for example, a rep of a luxury tequila brand, I would never want to go into a college bar and say, hey, you need to carry this brand. It just doesn't translate. At the same time, if I'm a $7 bottle of vodka, I probably don't want to go into a fine dining restaurant and say, this needs to be sitting on your back shelf. So what's your role? What's your identity? And what's your target audience? And then what is your pitch to the buyer? One of the things that I really, truly get under my skin is that when they come in and someone wants to pitch me on something, and instead of telling me the brand story, what it could do for my location or the company I work for, what it can do for our staff, our guests. All they do is tell me how it's at another space. They say, oh no, this was just brought in by A, B, and C. And I said, but that has nothing to do with D, which is where I work. And so what's the pitch? What's your unique selling point for the specific location that you're pitching to? Do your research. This is all before you've even made an appointment with that buyer. You need to know what the venue type and style is. For example, I work Fridays and Saturdays in an Italian restaurant. So when someone comes in and they want to pitch me a Burgundy, probably not going to land that sale. And they should have done that research prior to that. At the same time, if you work for an NA spirit and you do a little research, you may know that right now the NA market is exploding and the guy who buys for that restaurant does consulting work for NA products. This might be an easier path for you to kind of have a conversation where it's, I know you already know these products. What can we do to get them on the shelf? So do your research and understand what your priorities are. And then tailor the pitch to the space's goals. I think we all sort of fall into that mindset of what's in it for me? What can I do? Me, my, I. And I think that we lose the point of brands and restaurants are, again, a symbiotic relationship. So if I can carry your brand and I can move cases for you, what does it do for me? And how does it fit? So for example, there are not a lot of calls for rum at the space I work at. but we still need rum for those occasional people. So I need the right rums. I need to have a kind of a broader spectrum quickly. So we have 3 bottles. And we need to make sure that those bottles encapsulate pretty much the entire experience of anyone who wants rum. Whether it's a daiquiri that's not going to, cost $50 a cocktail, but at the same time, a luxury brand that's going to give them more of a tasting rum opportunity. So these are all things that need to be focused on even before you make that appointment. Identify the buyer and their position. I'll give you another example. So I happen to have won a very large bartending competition called Diageo World Class back in 2017. And thank you. And I have had reps come in who said, hey, I work for Diageo. Can I talk to the buyer? And I said, that's me. And I said, I'm Chris. And they say, great. Are you familiar with our brand? And I smile at them and I say, I won World Class. And I've had one say, what is that? And I'm like, all right, well, this is clearly someone who, again, just didn't do their homework. There are other people who come in who are say, I know what your deal is. And like, for example, like in a non-alc space, they said, oh yeah, I know what you're doing. And I have these particular brands. I would love to talk to you about them. Are you familiar with them? Yes, I am. Great. Do you think this would work in your program? Yes or no? So all of that stuff's really important. And then again, solve their problem, not yours. So it's important to understand and identify what the goal of your brand is to solve that space's problem. And that space's problem is not the same as every space in, for example, New York, right? New York, we're blessed with 65 or 70,000 different spaces who have a liquor license in Manhattan alone. So all of those spaces have different needs. Some of them cannot get anybody in the door and they need help from that. Other places have no problem getting anybody in the door, but they need support in a different way. So again, it's identifying what's going to help the buyer, not necessarily your KPI goals. Okay, now you made your meeting, right? I cannot tell you how many times in the past 18 years of buying for restaurants, I have had a rep walk in at 6 o'clock on a Friday and say, hey, can I talk to somebody about getting my product in the door? And I smile and I say, yeah, give me your card. Great, I'll make sure this gets to the right person. And it goes right in the garbage. That person has immediately lost me instantly because they're not focused on when it's good to come in at the right times. So soft intros, and again, I am one of those people who I hate emailing to try to do a cold intro, but at the same time, if you can't do an email, go through a referral. Talk to a distributor to get you in the door. Go in at an appropriate time before they open. Do your research. The restaurant opens at 4:30. Go in at 2 and say, listen, I know you're still setting up. I was just wondering if I can make an appointment to speak to you at a time that works for you. And again, now you're in the door. Now I'm here to listen. Then the next thing is bring the right tools. Samples, sell sheets, visuals. This is all really important stuff because sometimes you have somebody who's very, very educated in a brand. And what they want to do is they want to taste the product and they want to instantly tell you whether or not it works for what they need. Other times, they don't know what they need. They're brand new, they're opening, they're just getting a brand new staff and a brand new location, and they don't know exactly what they can have. So you can just dump their whole portfolio on them. But one of the things that I get a lot is people will come in with the suitcase, right? The rolling suitcase, you know what I'm talking about, and they'll pull out 15 bottles. And I'm like, whoa, whoa, whoa. I don't have time for 15 bottles right now. I asked you to come in with 1 bottle or 2 bottles. So a lot of times somebody will email me from a wine distributor or a liquor distributor, and they'll say, hey, can you give me 10 minutes of your time? I have a brand I want you to taste. And I say, sure. And bring on 1 or 2 other things that you're really, really excited about. And I'm happy to taste them. But again, if you pull out 15, that's too much of a commitment. I'm very busy when I get to work. So what I want to do is I want to taste it. I want to know how much it costs. That's it. I'm done. I don't need to have any more conversations. If I'm interested, I'll ask you more about it so I can educate my staff further in the unique selling points of the brand. But at the end of the day, it's pretty crystal clear for me. I need to know what it tastes like, if it's good, if I'm going to either bring it in or replace it with something, and then what the price point is, what the breaks are. I'm good. I don't need to have any more conversations. Make your pitch count. Leave with value, not your ego. Again, what can I do for you, right? So when I think about vodka is a great example. There are some bars that have many, many vodkas, but the majority of bars only have a few, and they all have different reasons for that vodka and what that placement is. So what are you going to do? How do you show the value of your brand and differentiate it from another brand? Show them how it helps their bottom line. And again, I use this example because I think most of us are familiar with these brands. When you look at Dewar's and you look at Johnnie Walker Blue, these are very, very different positioned brands, right? When you think about it. The majority of people that come in are not going to ask you for a Johnny Blue Manhattan. Great, if you can, good for you. But most people don't do that. Most people are going to splurge on a Johnny Blue as a luxury, generally an event that doesn't happen on a regular basis. While Dewar's might be something in your well for normal cocktails. So again, what is it? How does it help their bottom line? Maybe they need a better scotch that is going to give more flavor, more enjoyment to the cocktail than your current one that you're using. Or maybe you do need a luxury brand like a Johnnie Walker Blue to really bring up the portfolio that maybe there's a hole there. So how does your brand help them fill a goal? And then same thing with gaps and category gaps. But be transparent with all your pricing. This is really, really important. As a buyer, you're always focused on the bottom line, just like everyone else is. Bars make 10% if they're really doing well. So how do you help with pricing? What's the best break on your brand? How can we work together? One of the bigger issues I have personally as a buyer is in New York, space is very, very limited for storage. So one of the hardest parts I deal with is when they're like, oh no, if you pick up 15 cases, we'll do a great, we'll get you a great break. And I'm like, well now I need to deal with bill and holds because I can't buy 15 cases and put it downstairs. I don't have anywhere to put that. So how can we work together in some way? Maybe maybe they can lower that, they can make a deal, whatever that situation is with your brand. Try to figure out ways that you can help them with pricing. That's a big deal. And then again, leave the hype at home. At the end of the day, all of the hype stuff. Now, I go back, again, 20 years ago, but when vodkas would talk about how they were 150 times distilled in diamonds and things like that, all of that kind of stuff, just leave it at home. Be honest with the buyer, talk about the brand, be proud of what you do, and again, understand what the brand brings to the table and sell that. Don't sell the hype of stuff. And then you make your sale. So I say, yeah, sure, I'd love to bring it in. And so now I do. How do you support me afterwards? So again, confirm your distribution flow. I will give you a nightmare scenario. I had a great product that I was so excited about. And I reached out to the rep and I said, can you send me a sample of this so I can taste the owner on it? Because I think she's gonna go nuts. He sent it over, she tasted it. She said, this is great. I said, I know, I think so too. Can we bring it in a large amount and replace it? And she said, let's do it, let's run. And I emailed the rep, I said, we're in. I want 5 cases. And the rep sent me back and said, oh no, that's out of stock for a month and a half. So now I wrote back, I said, that was extremely unprofessional. It not only hurt me because I just wasted all that time, but it makes me look bad in front of my superior now because I just pitched a product that isn't available for a month and a half. So this is really, really important. Make sure you can do whatever you say you can do as far as distribution goes. Offer staff training. That's another big one. Make sure that if you are going to bring a product in, if you're going to get a placement, make sure you offer that. They may not need it, but they may love that opportunity. Sometimes a good staff training can really, really help sales because once the staff is trained, then that same night, their sales climb always. Pitch program ideas. So maybe they need you to print their menus for them. I've had brands offer to do that. Maybe you want to do a happy hour, an aperitivo event, something like that. Again, to get a draw. Because sometimes places need that extra draw. Don't get me wrong. No place needs help filling it between 6 and 8 p.m. But on the outskirts of both 4:30 to 6 and 8:30 to 10, those are hours where you can use some help. So if a brand can get people in and run events and give discounts and things like that, that's always really helpful. And then don't disappear after the placement. What can you do after to help them? That's so, so important. So again, I love when my reps reach out to me and they say, how is everything going? Can I help you? What can I do for you? And then lastly, don't just land, but stay relevant. So track your velocity, not just your placement. Make sure that it's moving. Make sure it's working there. Stay on top of mind with new content. Maybe you have a new brand on top of your brand to pitch. So do that. Reach out. Say, hey, how's it going? Oh, we love your product. Great. I have another product I'd love to taste you on and try you on. And then offer seasonal updates, limited time offers, new SKUs. Make sure that you are constantly in conversation with them. And again, don't pitch, just ask, may I bring this in? May I offer you something else? And so that's it. So in conclusion, again, the shelf is just the starting line. So every buyer and space is unique. Treat it that way. Be intentional, be flexible, be humble. Understand that it's about their needs as much as yours. And then the goal is not just to land, but it's to stay and stay relevant.